So talk to us about cooked foods because I hear raw vegan and raw foods used as a term a lot. But when I look at the population of human beings, maybe 1 in 10,000 people is eating a raw food, completely raw vegan diet. So so it just seems like, what about the other 9,999 people? So talk to us about a combination of using raw foods and whole plant-based foods, and what's your point of view about that? And what can people use as accessible advice that they can actually implement, or what do you find works for you in terms of some cooked food and some raw food, or what's your perspective
Sure.
on?
So my perspective is number one, I'd say if we look at the blue zones, right? How many blue zones are all entirely raw vegan? Like none of them. Everybody in a blue zone does eat some cooked food or heat processed food, as I like to call it, and some of them could live very long lives. Now, yeah, diet is one part of the reason why they live very long, and many of them also garden, get good amounts of exercise, and don't have all the stress levels that we do have in modern life. But that's aside from the point. So, I mean, I think an entirely raw vegan diet, it could work for some people. I haven't seen people have extraordinary long lives from raw vegan, with few exceptions. There's exceptions out there. Um, and longevity, to me, is part of health for sure. um that being said, I mean, I am strictly against most cooked foods that are out there, including a lot of vegan cooked foods. So like I'm a totally different cookie because I've kind of come up with my own ideas based on the science and based on testing and experimenting on myself. So, I still highly believe that raw foods are very beneficial, and that most Americans actually need to eat a heck of a more lot of raw foods because most people simply don't. And one of the reasons why raw foods is good, and I have a whole video on all the reasons why raw food is good, is because it's minimally processed. You're pretty much just picking leaves and greens, like I was picking moringa out of my garden this morning and snacking and stuff, and just eating it without any processing. And the big problem is the processed food, the ultra processed food that people are eating, that are just deranging the food and making like literally people crazy. I mean, there's books written on this subject, the crazy makers, um, but I think there are healthy heat processed foods, but it's not something you're going to be able to go out and get at any restaurant for the most part, in my opinion. Because I mean, so like these days I eat 70 to 90% raw. Maybe some days there's even 100%, just depends on the day. Some days I don't really even desire any heat processed food. Just really depends on that day and what I'm eating. Like lately it's summertime, so I've been eating lots of fruits, and kind of my fruit consumption has gone up, and my, heat processed starch consumption has gone down. But I also don't believe these days in being too extreme. I think that for every time you eat a food, you have an opportunity. You have an opportunity to improve your health or decrease your health. Some people on a fruit-based diet might think, hey, if I just pound in more oranges and eat a mono meal of oranges, I'm going to increase my health. In my opinion, if you eat a lot of oranges, that's great. You're getting a lot of the nutrients in oranges, but how many nutrients from the oranges does your body need? And at some point now you've oversaturated the specific nutrients in oranges that you're eating. So now that your body is just basically flushing them out. When if you ate like half oranges and maybe even just half blueberries, now you got two different kinds of nutrients in each of those, and then you could eat a section of those, or maybe even do three. Do oranges, blueberries, and strawberries. Or maybe you want to do blueberries, oranges, strawberries, and then have a little bit of, cooked beans or something, and now you're getting different fibers and nutrients in the beans. So spreading it out instead of these more, just a single item, because you're missing an opportunity for other nutrients that are in other foods besides just oranges, besides having mangoes, besides just having whatever that mono meal fruit is. And I mean, in a bigger picture, I see that, hey, raw foods is great. It limits your diet down to eating mostly fruits and vegetables, maybe some nuts and seeds if you're eating nuts and seeds, maybe some sprouted grains and beans, the ones that can be sprouted and eaten without killing you or getting you sick. So it's a very restrictive diet, in my opinion. So by being able to heat process some of my foods, once again, small percentage, 10 to 20, maybe up to 30 sometimes. I'm able to, eat a wider range of foods. And, with the new studies of microbiome coming out, one of the things that always comes through is they want you to eat 30 different kinds of plants a week, which you could do on a raw vegan diet. It'd be hard for some people to do that. But when you're starting to heat process food, you could eat foods that weren't accessible otherwise. So, some beans, once again, and rice could be eaten raw. But I could steam those. And then also we could talk about resistant starches. So now I have benefits of resistant starches. So yeah, so things I heat process are only in the instant pot because as a raw vegan, my stove is still disconnected, used for storage. And that's the only way I recommend heating if you do want to cook your food, because that does it at the lowest temperature. So you're not creating carcinogens and making food pro-oxidative and going to age you. And meanwhile, some raw vegans would say all cooked food is bad, and I would say instead most cooked foods are bad and all ultra processed foods are bad. I'm eating a very simple whole food, just like last night, for example, I had like just steamed you know sweet potatoes, was my cooked food I ate yesterday. Otherwise, my day was actually all raw. Oh, I did. Oh, actually, I did have some purple rice and some navy beans that were also cooked in the instant pot in water to keep the temperature below 240 degrees, so you don't create carcinogens when you're heat processing.
Wow. So we're talking with John Kohler from OK Raw, and as you can hear, there's a lot of nuances to this. People throw around
Yeah.
terms like cooked versus raw. I mean, within cooked, you have all these levels and all these different methodologies of changing that chemistry that are way different than others. And so, if you want to find out more in more detail, look up John's YouTube channel, OK Raw. He goes into great detail about his process of preparing foods, and um,